Finally, this motion seeks to urge the Ministry of Education, in conjunction with the Council of Governors, to implement effective school feeding programs to ensure that children from vulnerable families in drought-hit regions have access to at least one hot meal per day, and that no child misses classes due to lack of food. This motion is lined up for consideration on the floor of the Senate this afternoon and will be moved by Honorable Senator Enoch Wambua. Currently is a quorum bell. Members are slowly walking into the chambers. Of course, the House has to attain a requisite number of 15 members in the chambers before the commencement of the House business. And that is what is currently happening, waiting for that particular number to be achieved to enable the House begin its business this afternoon. The Honorable Senator Mohammed Chute is this afternoon also moving a motion on the institution of measures to curb incessant high electricity cost in Kenya. This motion seeks to resolve that contracts signed by independent power producers detailing the cost, capacity, and duration of the the quorum has been achieved. Allow me to hand you over back to this live broadcast. Good afternoon. My name is Kamche Menza.
Order number 1, administration of oath.
Next order.
Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable Senators, we have a visiting delegation from the Parliament of Uganda in the Speaker's Gallery. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon, a visiting delegation from the Parliament of Uganda. The delegation comprises parliamentary officers who are on a benchmarking visit. I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that you may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. Honorable Senator, find your way to your seat. Ms. Sitina Chemisto Chelotich, General Counsel, Lead of Delegation. Mr. Solomon Kirunda, Director, Litigation. Dr. Robert Tumukwasibwe, Assistant Director, Table Office. Mr. Andilo Daniel, Assistant Director, Human Resources. Ms. Irene Milembe, Senior Administrative Assistant, Office of the Clerk. Mr. Ambangila Joshua, Human Resource Officer. Mr. Businga, Police Friend, Principal Administrative Secretary, Office of the Clerk. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish you a fruitful visit. Thank you. Honorable Senators, I have another communication to make concerning the demise of Honorable Kuro Maharim Hassan, Member of Parliament for Banisa constituency. Honorable Senators, it is with deep sorrow that I notify you of the untimely demise of the Member of the National Assembly for Banisa constituency, the Honorable Kuro Maharim Hassan, MP. That happened on Wednesday, 29th March 2023, after being involved in a road accident on Saturday, 25th March 2023, near the Al Huda Mosque in Saudi B Estate, Nairobi. Honorable Senators, the late Honorable Hassan Kulo Nalim was born in Mandera County. He earned a Master's of Science degree in Development Studies and a Bachelor's degree in Education, both from Kenyatta University, and a diploma in Education from Siriba Teachers College. The department colleague standing for the Kenya Advanced Certificate of Education, KACE, at Mandera High School, where he also sat for his ordinary O-level education. He was an accomplished teacher, and after graduating from Siriba Teachers College, he taught at Wajir High School before proceeding to Sheikh Hari School in Ilamu, Mandera County, where he also served as the deputy principal. Thereafter, he moved to Kigali Teachers College as a lecturer until 1992, when he changed careers and became the project coordinator at the Harland Regional Integrated Agency until 1993. Honorable Senator, proceed to your seat. Until his premature demise, the late Honorable Kuro was serving his second term in Parliament. He was first elected as a member from Banisa constituency in 2017 on the Economic Freedom Party, EFP, and under re-election on the 13th Parliament. In August 2022, under the sponsorship of the United Democratic Movement, UDM Party. The late honorable member will be remembered as a dedicated legislator in the National Assembly who served in the Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives and the Public Accounts Committee. In the 12th Parliament, the late Honorable Kuro served in the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. Honorable Senators, in accordance with the Islamic tradition, the bond of our department colleague was buried at 1:45 p.m. yesterday, Wednesday, 29th March 2023, at the Muslim cemetery in Langata, which was presided by Janaza prayers at Masjid Nur Mosque in South Sea, Nairobi. On behalf of all senators and the entire staff of the Senate, and indeed on my own behalf, I wish to take this opportunity to condole with the family of Honorable Kuro Marim, members of the National Assembly, the people of Banisa constituency, and all his friends in this most difficult time. The Parliament of Kenya and the nation at large has indeed lost an diligent leader. Honorable Senators, in honor of our departed colleague, I request that in the usual tradition, we all stand and observe a moment of silence. May the soul of the late Honorable Kuro Marim Hassan rest in Jannah. I thank you. Honorable Senators, I want to give a few members to condole our departed colleague. My dashboard is blank. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to join you together with the rest of our colleagues in condoling with the family of our departed colleague, the Honorable Hassan. Honorable Hassan was a very likable gentleman, a good friend to many of us, and it's sad in the way that he eventually met his death. From what I hear, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Hassan loved walking on the streets of this city. And it's during one of his morning strolls, I was knocked down by a motorbike. I was at the Aga Khan Hospital. Unfortunately, he succumbed to the injuries yesterday morning. It's really unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that such a gifted leader, serving, I think, his second term, because I know you served with him in the National Assembly last term. That's why I met him together with many of colleagues with whom they served together in the Transport Committee. On many occasions, we debate on the politics of the day at the members' lounge, the tea area where many afternoons members do get to engage each other. And I remember fondly engaging him on his side of the political divide versus ours and how we viewed the world differently. It's the way of life for all of us that are on this earth, Mr. Speaker. So condolences to the people of Banisa for losing their leader and member that they cherished and elected for the second time last August, Mr. Speaker, only for him to depart hardly a few months after they had granted him the mandate to represent them in the August House. It's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, but it calls unto us as leaders to reflect and know that there is no certainty, Mr. Speaker, that we live by faith, knowing that we are here today, but not certain about tomorrow. I wish him well in his journey, Mr. Speaker, and do wish his family great comfort. I do know members of the family, some of them as well, Mr. Speaker. We wish them great comfort during this time of extreme difficulty. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if I'd be remiss, but I want to just in a minute also welcome the visiting delegation from the Parliament of Uganda who have joined us. Like I have said in this house before, Kenya was granted the opportunity to host IAPI, East African Parliamentary Institute. If you've driven along Langata Road in Karen, Mr. Speaker, you know that just before the Kenya School of Law, there's a construction that Parliament of Kenya is undertaking. That is the institute that will host the training institute for all the parliaments of the East African community, which on many occasions, apart from visiting Parliament, delegations such as the one we have today with us, Mr. Speaker, will head there for their training. This is an honor that we were given by the Heads of State Summit about 2 or 3 years ago, and Kenya is quickly expediting on that process to ensure that in a few years' time, we are able to congregate there and interact. I know, Mr. Speaker, and I say this as a ranking member and somebody who's been around for a while, that amongst all the parliaments of the East African community, our closest friends, Mr. Speaker, are the Parliament of Uganda. We interact with them during the annual IALA Games and get to play with them. I was looking keenly to see if I'd spot any of the footballers that we play with, but I believe maybe the members, the team that are visiting, they look a bit posh to me, so they must be members of a golf team or a sport that is a bit more affluent than football, which is played by ordinary mortals like myself, Mr. Speaker. But I wish them well during their stay in Kenya. May they get the full optimum, Mr. Speaker, duration of their study and whatever they are looking forward to getting during this interaction with members of Parliament and their staff and everything that they are looking forward to. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Honorable Senators, let us take just 2 minutes to pass the message that you have on the 2 communications that I made. So next is Senator Medu John Muhia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I confirm that I'm the Senator for Nyandarua. I also join my colleagues in sending my most sincere condolences to the family of the Honorable Hassan. I have had an opportunity of knowing Honorable Hassan. He was a humble leader and a man who was, he had committed his life to serving his people. Serving in his second term as a Speaker, it is such a blow to his constituents, the people of his constituency. It is also a very big loss, I'm sure, to the family. I would want to ask that God gives them comfort to take and bear the loss. And I'm also passing also my most sincere condolences again to his party, the UDM party, whose party leader is our colleague, the Honorable Dr. Captain Ari Roba, and indeed the other members of the UDM party who are here. UDM party is part of our Kenya Kwanza fraternity. So we send our most sincere condolences. We ask that God comforts the hearts of the family. Mr. Speaker, if you also allow me to also send my most sincere condolences again to my alma mater, the university that gave me my degree, the Pony University, who have this afternoon, unfortunately, have lost a big group of students who are on their way to Jaramogi Oginga University for a games event, Mr. Speaker, and we've seen a communication from the university, maybe which will come to the office a little later, that we have lost them in tents, and it is such a sad situation, Mr. Speaker, that parents who sent their students to study and students who left the university, Pony University is quite far, it is in Kilifi County. They came all the way to Naivasha, they went to fly the flag of our university, Pony University, very high. And it is such a sad situation, Mr. Speaker, that I will go back in caskets. I would want to send my sincere condolences to the parents of the departed comrades, send my most sincere condolences to the fraternity of the Pony University fraternity, both the students, the teaching and non-teaching staff, and those of us who are the alumni of that university. It's a dark cloud over our institution, and I'm sure we shall be able to bounce back again. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I also want to welcome the visiting delegation from the Parliament of Uganda. I confirm, just as the speaker who spoke before me, we enjoyed some bit of warmth from our colleagues, the members of Parliament who are playing with us for the football team of the Parliament of Uganda. So they are our friends and they are our brothers, and we are hopeful that we shall be able to give them and show them our legendary hospitality as a country, as a parliament, and as a legislature. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Okenyuri Hester Anyeni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was actually gutted to learn about the demise of Honorable Kuluo. I first met Honorable Hassan at my days in the office of the Deputy President, where I worked closely on TVET issues in the Strategy and Delivery Unit. Honorable Kulo was a frequent visitor in that department because he was all the time following up on the development of technical training institutions for the people of Banisa, which was in line with Jubilee's agenda of equipping young people with technical skills to solve the issue of unemployment. So it's really saddening me, and later we reconnected with him in the Senate. He frequently kept checking whether I had actually gotten nominated. That's how close the relationship was. Then later I learned about his demise from our caretaker, who was actually part of the team that rescued him on that day and who provided the CCTV footage that assisted in arresting the Boda Boda rider. So on behalf of my own self, the young people, I want to send my sincere condolences to the family, friends, and people of Banisa constituency, and my condolences to the comrades who've also lost their lives from Pwani University. Once a comrade, always a comrade. And finally, I also wish to welcome the members from the Ugandan Parliament. The last time I was there, I think most of them thought I'm their long-lost sister in Kenya. But I want to remind them, yes, that's your sister in Kenya, and we welcome you to this parliament. Thank you.
You know, I'm trying to balance in both the sides, and now I engage Senator Kenyu and Eri to join.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kuonyesha usawa kwa wote Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, nataka kuungana na wewe kwa kuleta risala za rambirambi za watu wote wa Laikipia kupeleka kwa watu wa Banisa na kuambia kwamba wamempoteza kiongozi Mheshimiwa Kuro Hassan, ambaye tulimjua mtu aliyejitolea na kufanyia wananchi kazi bila kupendelea, kama vile Bwana Spika ulivyofanya, bila kupendelea upande wowote. Hata Mheshimiwa Kuro alikuwa namna hiyo Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo mimi nileta risala zangu mwenyewe za familia yangu na vile vile za watu wa Laikipia. Na tuseme ya kwamba ndugu zetu wa bodaboda ambao wanaendesha hizi pikipiki wawe waangalifu, kwa sababu ajali zinatokea kwa watu wengi. Huyu ni mmoja ambaye tunaye kuja hapa kuleta zetu rambirambi, lakini kila siku unapata watu wetu wanapata hizi ajali, wengine wanakufa. Vijana wale wa bodaboda hata wanapata maafa. Ukitembelea hospitali zetu unapata wagonjwa wengi wametokana na hizi ajali za bodaboda. Wale wanaendesha bodaboda wanaumia. Kwa hivyo siku ya leo, Bwana Spika, ni siku ya huzuni kwa sisi kumpoteza kiongozi ambaye tulimuenzi, sasa tutamkosa. Vile ambavyo ningependa kuambia watu wa Banisa, tunawashukuru kwa vile ambavyo walimchagua mara ya pili, na walimchagua kwa sababu ni mchapakazi. Bwana Spika, nataka kuungana na wewe kuwakaribisha ndugu zetu wa kutoka Uganda na tuwaambie wakaribie nchini kwetu. Na mimi ni uhakika kwa sababu ukitembea hata pale Kampala, Uganda, unawapata wanaongea kwa lugha ya Kiswahili. Ni watu wanakifahamu Kiswahili, wanakimenya, na nasema Kiswahili kitukuzwe. Sisi hapa kwetu tuna ile shule ambayo ilitajwa na kiongozi wa wengi inaitwa CPST, ambayo itakuwa ikifanya mafunzo. Tungeomba mkifika hapo mtembelee hata huko, ndio muweze kuona masomo ambayo yanayotekelezwa huko. Bwana Spika, nasema asanti na nawaambia karibu, na muendelee kwa kucheza golf ambayo imesemekana na ndugu yangu, na hata mimi nimebombea katika golf na najua tutapatana viwanjani. Na kabla hamjaenda nyumbani, mtembelee mbuga zetu za wanyama, ndio muweze kuona mambo ambayo tunafanya hapa Kenya, na mpeleke kwenu nyumbani salamu zetu. Asante Bwana Spika na nashukuru.
Asante sana. Senator William Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On behalf of myself and the people of Elgeyo-Marakwet County, I wish to convey our condolences to the family of Honorable Hassan. Hassan, we served together in the last parliament in National Assembly when he was the member for Badiza, and he was re-elected for a second term. So it's unfortunate that he lost his life through an accident in South Sea. We wish the family comfort, peace, strength, and also acceptance during this difficult time. You know, it's not easy to accept that you've lost your loved one. Honorable Speaker, also I wish to also convey my condolences to the youth, the family of the students from Bwana University who lost their lives in Naivasha while they were going for a trip to other universities to compete. And then finally, I welcome our colleagues from Uganda. Welcome to Kenya. Kenya is a warm country where we encourage visitors. The college that is in Karen is at advanced stage. I think they're on the second floor now. So I believe you'll be coming here regularly for training. And this year, December, I'll join you in playing golf also with the Honorable Kinyua. You know, that's the game for those who are already mature and elderly like us. God bless you.
Senator Fatuma Duro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to join you and my colleagues in passing my condolences to our colleague that we lost yesterday. Mr. Kulo, or Mheshimiwa Kulo, is known to me. He's a very humble, down-to-earth legislature that I've known him for the last 6 years, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Kulo is a very hard-working colleague. I know his family, especially the wife who is working at Kura by the name Sadia. It's really very sad. Mr. Speaker, I think a lot of accident is taking place in this country as a result of boda. And as a country, we really need to do something about it. But it's unfortunate that one of us is killed by boda, which is really, really unfortunate. It was very bad accident because somebody was telling me the injury was so bad that you can't imagine the way the brain was damaged. And that is unfortunate. Of course, for a member of parliament, we have insurance. But there are so many Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, that are losing their life. Some of them, they are actually losing their legs and their hands and so many other parts of their bodies. And I think something has to be done because it's not right. We do accept boda is the best mode of transport, but the accident that is caused by boda, we need to take serious action on them. So wish the family a strength, and we pray for our brother to go to, according to us Muslim, we say Jannatul Firdaus. That means they goes to the highest heaven. Mr.
You know, she has mentioned heaven now. I can't.
Mr.
give
Speaker,
you 1 more minute.
since I've mentioned heaven, maybe you give me 2 minutes to conclude. Mr. Speaker, it's not easy. We pray for the family, and I wish to welcome also our colleagues from Uganda. As a legal committee, we have received 2 delegations from Uganda this session, and I hope we should also reciprocate in visiting Uganda Parliament so that we can be able to interact with them and learn from them. So wish you a nice day, and we wish you a happy stay in Kenya, and also maybe to be able to learn 1 or 2 things from us. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you, Senator Mungatana Danson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to join my colleagues in registering my sincere condolences to our colleague who has left us. Mr. Speaker, this is not an ordinary politician. The fact that in 2017, he was elected on the Economic Freedom Party, and then the same person in 2022, he was elected on United Democratic Party. It speaks to the fact that, Mr. Speaker, it is not about the political party, but we are talking about a solid, humble man. People had put a lot of trust, the people of Banisa. I want to say very sorry. May God give you comfort during this time. And also very sorry to the family, especially the wife and the children, because, Mr. Speaker, these are the people who are hardest hit. On behalf of our people in Tana River County, we want to join in expressing sincere condolences to our departed colleague and his family. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I noted that the cause of this accident was because our honorable departed member used to take walks. And Mr. Speaker, that's not very different from what I do. I like running, Mr. Speaker, and on the road. And the thing that you notice, Mr. Speaker, is that there are hardly any pavements, pedestrian movements, areas. So
Now, honorable senators, kindly note that it's 2 minutes, and also check the light, because we have a lot of business today. And I want us to at least to get somewhere. But if Senator Mugatana, you know you are senior legislator here. Just 1 minute, and you are the last one that I'm handing any other some more time to speak.
yes, Mr. Speaker, I was
Just
just
1 minute.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was just saying that we have also failed as a government, as Nairobi County, in providing sufficient pavements where pedestrians can be walking without the fear of these motorcycles. So, Mr. Speaker, this is something that maybe needs to be taken up at this level. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Veronica Nduati.
Mr. Speaker, let me take this opportunity to offer my deepest condolences to the family of Honorable Hassan Kulo, who unfortunately lost his life a few days ago. And before we could recover from those news, Mr. Speaker, he was already buried under the Muslim rites of passage. Mr. Speaker, he's been described by many of his colleagues at the National Assembly as a very humble and a good man. And Mr. Speaker, that is attested to by the fact that he has been voted in twice by the people of Banisa constituency. He departed, Mr. Speaker, under circumstances which maybe could have been avoided, Mr. Speaker, through a road traffic accident with the border, Mr. Speaker, and we would pray that, Mr. Speaker, our nation reaches a point where we can cease to have as many fatalities as we are having in the Republic of Kenya through the road traffic accidents, Mr. Speaker. But if we were to learn from the virtues that were exuded by the legislator who has passed on, Mr. Speaker, his life speaks into our lives on virtues of being good people, people who are reasonable and humble, and people who are not afraid to go for their dreams, Mr. Speaker. He rose from being a teacher and became a legislator representing the wishes of the people, Mr. Speaker. We offer our prayers, our support, our emotional support to the family, to the colleagues, and Mr. Speaker, to the great people of Banisa constituency, and to his political party, the UDM political party, which is led by one of our own colleagues here at Senate, Mr. Speaker, and we pray that God will comfort them and grant them grace and
Thank you, Senator Abbas Sheikh Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to also join you to condole the family and the Banisa constituency, where our brother and Master Hassan Kulo Ma'alim Hassan. Kulo Ma'alim Hassan actually is well known to me. In 2017, 2020, we were neighbors. We live in the same place in South Sea. And he's a very simple man. I know him. I actually been in school. I was classmate with his elder brother. Kulo, actually, when he joined the parliament, he comes from the far end of northern Kenya, the border of Ethiopia and Somalia, and Kenya. And as far as it is, Honorable the late, he used to go to his constituency very frequently. A very hard-working man, a very simple man, a man who was holy and who was attached to the mosque. And I'm sure the people from his constituency will miss him. Mr. Speaker, I want on behalf of on my own behalf and behalf of Wajir County, I want to condole the family. I know he has a very big family. He has 3 widows, I know, and about 16 children. So such a big number, and I think many of them are young. And we pray to them that may God Almighty bring them up, in the most simple way, and may also God bless him in heaven and in the paradise of what we call Jannah Firdausa. With those few remarks, I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Sheikh. Senator William Cheptum Mokipolil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me also to send my heartfelt condolences to the family, friends, and the relatives of the late Hassan. Mr. Speaker, I served in the National Assembly with the late in the 12th Parliament. And I can actually confirm to colleagues here that indeed Honorable Hassan was a very humble man, a very friendly person, and very committed to his work as a member of Parliament. During my time in the National Assembly, during the 12th Parliament, we used to even have some programs with him. When he has functions in his place, I would send him some money in support. When I have in my place, he used to also contribute substantially. So this country has lost a very, very important leader. And of course, Mr. Speaker, the great people of Banisa definitely will miss his leadership. We continue to pray for the family, that God will continue to uphold them and to give them the peace during this very difficult moment. And I think, Mr. Speaker, the problem of these accidents arising from border. Today we are able to speak about our colleague because we know him. But there are many, many Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, who really also lose their lives through this accident of the borders. I think there is need to come up with ways and means of ensuring that we reduce this, said by members. Finally, Mr.
Your message is home, Chair Security. The last is from Senator Sigei Wakiri.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I also want to join you and the rest of my colleagues in condoling with the family of the late Honorable Hassan and the people of Banisa. Mr. Speaker, on my own behalf and on behalf of the people of Bomet, we want to wish the family of the late Honorable Hassan God's grace at this very difficult time. Having a legislature die in the circumstances that the Honorable Hassan lost his life is very difficult to explain. But, Mr. Speaker, we all say the plans that we do have as mortals are different from the plans that the Almighty God has for each and every one of us. And it's time for us to reflect upon our lives and also the responsibilities that are bestowed upon us as leaders of this country and other places where we come from, to make sure that we do the best while we still have the life that God grants us. I want to wish the people of Banisa, the family of the late Hassan, God's grace to overcome the difficult time of losing one of their loved ones. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Next.
Order number 4, petitions.
Senator Samson Chelagay has a petition to present. He is not around. Next order. That petition is defined. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Next order. There is a paper to be read by the chair, Agriculture Committee. Do you have any member of the committee around agriculture? You can read the paper on behalf of your chair and the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, the 30th March 2023, report on the Magbin Bill 2022, Senate Bill number 13 of 2022. By the chairperson, I'm not the chairperson, but I did.
Chair, Labor and Social Welfare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to make this statement. The Senate request for statement on the grabbing of land.
Chair Labor, there is a paper you are supposed to read. Approach the table. You are not yet to the statements. You are end of time.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate. Today, 30th March 2023, report on employment, Amendment Bill 2022, Senate Bill number 11 of 2022. Chairperson, Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. I lay.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Chair Security, Senator Cheptumo William.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice on a notice of motion integration of ethnic minorities and marginalized communities in Kenya. Aware that Kenya is a multi-ethnic country with a rich diversity of cultures, language, and traditions, further aware that ethnic minorities and marginalized communities face significant social, economic, and political challenges, including discrimination, marginalization, and exclusion. Acknowledging that Article 10, Subarticle 2B, 21C, 21.3, 27, 56, 91, Subarticle 1C, Article 10, Article 174E, Article 177(1)C, Article 204, Subarticle 3B, Article 216, Subarticle 4, and the 5th schedule to the Constitution of Kenya obligates the state to promote and protect the welfare of ethnic minorities and marginalized communities. Appreciating that the government has put in place policies, legal and institutional framework, including affirmative action programs to address the needs of other social interest groups, namely children, persons with disabilities, youth, women, and elderly. Concerned that ethnic minorities and marginalized communities remain largely unaddressed through similar interventions due to lack of an existing national policy and legislative framework. Now, therefore, this Senate resolves that the Ministry of Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action, the National Gender and Equality Commission, and other state departments in collaboration with the Council of Governors, 1, initiate measures to identify and address the specific needs and challenges faced by ethnic minorities, marginalized communities in Kenya, and 2, develop and implement a national policy and legislative framework for the integration of ethnic minorities and marginalized communities in Kenya as envisaged in the Constitution of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have a second notice of motion.
Okay.
I proceed. Mr. Speaker, this is a notice on declaration of cattle rustling as a national disaster and establishment of a special fund for victims. Aware that cattle rustling is a major menace and security threat to the South and North Rift regions and some other regions in the country. Concerned that the menace has since left irreversible and negative socio-economic impact, which include, but not limited to, an increased number of widows, widowers, orphaned children, poverty, displacement of people, leading to internally displaced persons, IDPs, disruption of educational programs, and other economic activities owing to the destruction and or closure of educational, health, and other institutions. Further concerned that the people living in the affected regions have been denied the enjoyment of their social, economic, and political rights as guaranteed to them under the Bill of Rights as enshrined in our Constitution, Chapter 4 of the Constitution. Now, therefore, this Senate resolves that the national government, through the Ministry of Interior and National Administration, 1, declare cattle rustling a national disaster. 2, establish a national task force on cattle rustling. 2, 1, investigate the causes of the rampant cattle rustling in the said regions and the country at large. 2, establish the extent of loss and damage the cattle rustling menace as occasioned to the communities in all the affected counties. 3, establish a special fund for mitigating the losses suffered by and in compensating all victims of cattle rustling and settle all internally displaced persons occasioned by the cattle rustling menace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Let's go to the next one.
Order number 7, statements.
Senator, we have 3 statements. Senator Esther Okenyuri. And Honorable Senators, I will advise that from where I sit, we have realized that we are spending a lot of time on statements and members seeking to either support or to make comments on the statements. So we are strictly on the statement hour, which should be followed strictly. And if we save time, we can get to the motions, because also many members who have motions on the order paper are approaching the chair every time requesting whether their motions can be expended with. Therefore, let us save as much time as possible so that we can get to the real business. Members take a lot of time to do a lot of research and all these things on the motions and bills. So, Senator, can you proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Request for statement on lack of national design and framework for civic education in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on the lack of a national design and framework for civic education in Kenya and its implications on the implementation of Section 100 of the County Government Act 2012. In the statement, the committee should, 1, provide an update on the implementation of Section 100 of the County Government Act of 2012, which requires each county to establish a civic education program. 2, state reasons for delay in establishment of civic education programs in all counties of Kenya, in contravention of the provisions of Article 33 of the Constitution, giving clear timelines for implementation. 3, state how the contents of the civic education curriculum are being determined in the absence of a national design and framework for civic education. 4, state targeted measures in the short term to establish a national design and framework for civic education in Kenya, leveraging the use of information technology, and finally, state measures in place to promote public awareness to ensure that the civic education programs established by counties are aligned and consistent with national goals and objectives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
As I've just communicated, I'll give few senators to make at least 2 minutes comments on these statements. Yeah, 2 minutes. Majority Leader, are you trying to control the chair? Are you even trying to imagine? Yeah? Okay, Senator Mutinda Tabitha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the statement by Senator Esi Okenyuri, matters civic education. And Mr. Speaker, I want to state that civic education is a continuous process of acquiring information and experience, and mostly as far as good governance is concerned. It is with this information that is actually not a privilege, but a right that should be offered from the county level, the fact that we are at a devolved system of governance. This civic education, Mr. Speaker, actually enhances good interrelations between the people of different ethnic groups and even religions over time. There is much more output when information is relayed. Mr. Speaker, I want to state with good civic education that should be offered continuously, will help curb issues like what we are currently seeing. As you know, right now, our colleagues are not present because of the current process that are ongoing. And our youths are actually being very much misused by some of the politicians, because if civic education would have been well offered, they will be able to understand how some of the concerns that the opposition is actually bringing on table, how best that they can be addressed. It is a high time that civic education is actually implemented, as Senator Okenyuri is requesting, so that some of these issues can be addressed. Information is power. With information, these issues will actually be addressed in just not short-term perspective, but long-term perspective. It's so sad in our country today that this lack of information has made our Kenyans and from different walks of life to be able not to understand what it really entails, because I believe in good governance is about offering its people education and information that they need. So I really rise and support the statement by Senator Esi Okenyuri. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Let us give a senator who has not spoken, who has not opened his or her mouth today. Senator Gloria Roba Magoma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I rise to support the statement by Senator Esther Okenyuri about civic education. Mr. Speaker, this country, where this country is going, when you look at our youth out in the street putting sufurias on their heads because they want the cost of living to go down, Mr. Speaker, it's because they don't understand. They don't understand how to bring the cost of living down. So therefore, their leaders are actually using them. Mr. Speaker, I was saddened this morning to see my age mates getting very, very excited that that today they are going for the demonstrations, Mr. Speaker. And I asked them one thing. I said, every time when they finish the demonstrations, Mr. Speaker, what do they benefit? Do they actually get something tangible, something sustainable? Do their leaders actually then tell them after the maandamano, this is what we have achieved, Mr. Speaker? If we had the proper civic education devolved down to the grassroots, down to the households in Imara Daima today, Mr. Speaker, where we are seeing the demonstrations, then those youth will refuse to be used. As a matter of fact, the youth will tell the senators who are not in the house that instead of going for maandamano, why are you not bringing a bill to propose that certain things be done so that the cost of living goes down? Mr. Speaker, then our youth will also understand that at the end of the day, it is not about demonstrating and causing havoc so that they can be brought to the table for a handshake, but they will understand it's about voting for the right leaders. Mr. Speaker, today when you look at the opposition, we only have one senator sitting there. Mr. Speaker, this one senator that is sitting on the side of opposition they understand what they need to do in order to represent their people. They understand that they need to come to the house where they are drawing a salary from and actually push for issues in terms of cost of living. So, Mr. Speaker, as I support Senator Okenyuri on this statement on civic education, I think we should even go a step further. It is imperative that we inculcate the culture of educating our children from nursery school on how county assemblies work, on how the government works, on who needs to do what so that we can have proper changes in this country. And so therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is very sad that we have leaders sitting in this house who actually need civic education so that they can understand their role in the house and how they can change the lives of Kenyans. And so therefore it is very much needed so that we can have this civic education in this house. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Mulgo, do you want to make a comment, or we are waiting for your statement, which is the next one coming? Okay. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for allowing me to make my comments about this civic education. Civic education is very important because of the empowerment that it gives people that have been educated. My community, the Pokots that come from West Pokot County, largely are illiterate. And therefore, when it comes to empowerment about information and their rights even, they are not aware what should be their rights. And therefore, civic education is very key into giving them empowerment. It also gives them to be aware about their rights. The Honorable Senator Jeptumo was giving sentiments about the rights, especially in cattle rustling area and so on, and also the fact that people that live in such areas are not aware about their rights, and therefore civic education will really give them to be aware of their rights. And then it also is a way of passing knowledge to them so that they know what is theirs, even within a county. Civic education should be carried, or the county government should train people and educate people on what is in their county and what powers they have, and participation in public opinion and public awareness is very key. And then also civic education makes people be united together because they have something to stand together for, and therefore I support this motion. Thank you.
Senator Kinyua Nderitu.
Bwana Spika, nasimama kuunga mkono taarifa hii. Na Bwana Spika, elimu ya uraia ni muhimu sana katika gatuzi zetu, Bwana Spika. Kama vile inavyosemwa vizuri ya kwamba ujuzi ni nguvu, Bwana Spika. Ukiangalia katika wakati mwingi ambapo raia wanaenda kupewa masomo ni wakati kuna uchaguzi. Ni mimea gani wanapaswa kupanda, Bwana Spika, na ni wakati upi wanapaswa kupanda, Bwana Spika? Haya ni mambo muhimu ambayo yanaweza kutumika katika gatuzi zetu, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, ukiangalia shida nyingi zilizoko ni kama vile Mheshimiwa Murgor alivyosema. Unapata wananchi wengi hawaelewi na hawafahamu, Bwana Spika. Hata wakati tunapaswa kupanda, Bwana Spika, hatujui ni mbolea gani ambayo tunapaswa kutumia. Bwana Spika, unapata watu wanasema ya kwamba kile ambacho ni cha bei rahisi ndicho muhimu kwao. Lakini Bwana Spika, ni kwa sababu ya kutokuwa na ule ujuzi na ufahamu wa maneno, Bwana Spika. Na ni jukumu yetu, nataka kushukuru taarifa iliyoletwa, Bwana Spika, tuizingatie na tuiweke maanani, Bwana Spika, ndiposa wananchi wetu waweze kufahamu na kuelewa, Bwana Spika. Kwa sababu kama ilivyosemwa, wale wanaofanya maandamano wanawaahidia watu maneno mengi, Bwana Spika. Lakini shida ya vile ambavyo tunaweza tukaleta gharama ya maisha chini, Bwana Spika, ni kuambia wananchi ukweli. Kuambia kwamba mambo yanayotendeka katika ulimwengu, Bwana Spika, yanatuadhiri hata sisi. Vita vilivyo kwa Ukraine vinatuadhiri hapa Kenya. Bwana Spika, mambo ya mafuta, bei ya mafuta, tuambie Wakenya ukweli. Bwana Spika, tuambie kwamba bei imepanda kwa sababu ukiangalia hata hali ya hewa imebadilika, Bwana Spika. Lakini haitawezekana, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu viongozi wengi ama ukiangalia wengi wanataka kuchukua fursa, kwa sababu wananchi wetu hawaelewi. Badala ya kuwafunza ni kuongoza katika njia zisizokuwa za amani, Bwana Spika. Kupeleka watu maandamano, Bwana Spika, haitakuwa ya manufaa. Vizuri tuambia kwamba wakati kama huu, kwa sababu kumenyesha, Bwana Spika, ukitembea sehemu nyingi za nchi yetu ya Kenya, saa hii watu wanapaswa kuwa akipanda, Bwana Spika, na kile ambacho tulikuwa tukiongea hapa, Bwana Spika, ni vile ambavyo wananchi wetu watakavyopelekewa mbolea, na mbolea yenyewe isipelekwe tu mijini, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu watu walio mijini, Bwana Spika, hawapandi. Upelekwe mashambani, Bwana Spika. Mfano ukienda Nyahururu, mbolea isifikishwe Nyahururu peke yake, Bwana Spika. Ipelekwe Marmanet, ipelekwe Rumuruti, ipelekwe Muhwateti, ipelekwe Kinambi, ipelekwe Matanya, ipelekwe Ramuria, Bwana Spika. Kwa sababu hiyo ndiyo taarifa inayomaanisha katika gatuzi zetu, Bwana Spika. Si katika miji pekee yake, kwa sababu watu wa mijini wanaelewa maneno, lakini ukienda pale ndiposa nasikia watu wengi wakisema, Bwana Spika, unaposikia wakiongea ya kwamba ground mambo ni tofauti, kwa sababu wale ndio maneno iko. Kwa hivyo nasimama leo kuunga mkono taarifa hiyo, na isikuwe tu ni taarifa, ni tuifuatilie mpaka yale ambayo aliyeleta taarifa alitaka tuyaangazie kwa kindani. Nashukuru, Bwana Spika.
Senator CJ.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to also support the statement by the Honorable Senator Esi on the need to seek information from the county governments and also generally on the implementation of Section 100 of the County Governments Act that provides for the training or training on civic education. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, civic education mandates or obligates the residents of each and every county in this country at large to also understand and appreciate self-governance. When we talk about self-governance, it can only be understood when the public knows their obligations and the obligations of those whom they have put in office in terms of the leadership from governor all the way to the MCA, and also extends beyond to the national government. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, Section 3 of the County Governments Act 2012, as part of its objectives, provides that that act facilitates or rather obligates the county government to undertake training or education on matters that are devolved and also on matters that the national government has an obligation to perform on behalf of its citizen. Where we are asked, I know, Mr. Speaker, at the end of this, you will commit this statement to Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. I do not want to preempt the extent of the work that the committee will do, but I would like to commit that once this statement is committed to us, we will undertake that work as expected of us as a committee. But then, Mr. Speaker, I note that the concerns in that particular statement requires also an extended approach in terms of what are the safeguard measures, or what are the measures that county governments have put in place in terms of legislation, in terms of ensuring that the provisions of that section 100 are implemented by putting in place policies, putting in place also manuals and training manuals, which the national government is expected to set up, cascaded downwards to the county government in order to make sure that it is not only put in paper as a requirement in law and is not implemented or enabled by the respective county governments passing legislation. I'm not aware of any particular county government that has put in place or that has pushed to ensure that the provisions of this section are implemented. And I think, and I want to appreciate also the Honorable AC for bringing it to the attention of the House and also the relevant committee, so that even as we embark on working on the statement, we will have an opportunity to invite the Education Committee, which also has a mandate in ensuring that relevant curriculum or regulatory frameworks are put in place in order to ensure that people at their lowest level are made to understand that they have a government that they've put in place, and that government has got specific obligations. Mr. Speaker, I know for a fact that a resident from Jemaner, the farthest corner of the county I represent, at some point, if he or she were to be asked as to what is the role of the county government, of a member of the county assembly, or a member of the National Assembly, or even Senate, who I represent here, what would be the specific roles, they might not be able to understand. And the best they can do is to ask, I need my right to be protected by the senator, by the MP, by the MC or the governor, without understanding beyond that demand for that right, that there is also an obligation on that particular citizen. I know for a fact, Mr. Speaker, that once we give them that opportunity to understand in the course of this particular training and implementation of this requirement of the law, they will know that they also have a role to play. And once they participate, that is when service delivery to the people will be eased and will actually be felt up to that lowest level. Mr. Speaker, I support, and as I've said, I undertake that we will do the job of the relevant committee once this statement is committed to us. Thank you.
Now let us get the next two statements for simultaneously by Senator Julius Mulgo and then Senator Bas Mohammed. What is the point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to make a small contribution on this one, and I have been on the line, Mr. Speaker. I ask if I can be given a few minutes.
How did you know you were in the line?
Because my gadget is showing so, Mr. Speaker.
No, you know,
so
in
unless
the,
we are
in the
not,
spirit of trying to save time, I was trying to limit the number of speakers this afternoon on that one particular statement, because I've given more than eight senators
Mr.
on
Speaker,
that particular statement by Senator.
Mr. Speaker, this affects the entire country.
So if you can make 1 minute, you can?
Mr. Speaker, maybe two minutes. Thank you.
I'm really keen to hear what you want to say.
Extremely
It's
so,
matter
Mr.
of
Speaker.
national importance.
Yes.
Let me give you 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the person who is regarded as a father of civic education is Benjamin Franklin, Mr. Speaker, who is a founding father of the American nation, which was a colony of Britain. Mr. Speaker, he believed that a good government will come from good citizens. A better government will come from a well-informed citizenry. Mr. Speaker, this statement, and I pray JLAC will look at it very keenly, it seeks to set up a framework. Because a lot of times, Mr. Speaker, civic education in this country is carried towards election, and it is in a warped manner towards supporting or opposing government. So, Mr. Speaker, I really urge that they look into it, and when they look into it, they will think about counties like the Honorable Murgor's county and my county in Tana River, where there is so much clanism, tribalism, and there is no framework for expressing things that are governmental. So then politicians take advantage, Mr. Speaker, to lead or mislead people along tribal lines. And Mr. Speaker, even making government irrelevant or good politics irrelevant. So, Mr. Speaker, we need this statement like yesterday to be done in such a way that it translates into reality, especially in some of our counties that are full of clanism, tribal affiliations, and therefore they make the people look at government at the national, even at the county, in terms of clouding, using their tribal eyes. And it makes life very difficult, even to do politics at the county level, at the national level. This is a very good statement, and I pray that they will give it the attention it deserves so that we can all benefit from this concern that was shown by my very hardworking fellow colleague, Senator Esther Okenyuri. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. This statement has attracted a lot of interest. And where I sit, I know a statement cannot be able to solve the issues that you are addressing, Senator Mugatana. So I wish Senator Esther could even come up with a bill that could really help. Because also where I sit, I know we have that challenge of people getting the right information. People are misled by media, like now, social media is really misleading everybody. So Esther, Senator Esther, maybe think beyond the statement, because this is just a statement from the ministry, which will not be able to sort the real issues. You want to make a commitment? Please do.
Mr. Speaker, I want to actually make a commitment in working with the members who have like mind, and I'm looking forward to full support, especially now that this is something that should have actually been done. The closest it got was what Professor Kibwana was doing, but otherwise, generally, there hasn't been much on it. So I'm really committed to doing that, and I'm counting on the support of colleague senators. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Mulgo Julius.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make this statement. Request for statement on grabbing of land belonging to Kanyarkwat Group Ranch in West Pokot. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53, 1, to seek statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources on the grabbing of land belonging to Kanyarkwat Group Ranch in West Pokot. In the statement, the committee should explain the circumstances under which land belonging to Kanyarkwat Group Ranch, which is a community land, was mislocated clarify whether the correct legal procedure was followed in issuing the below title deeds, and state which beneficiaries are on West Pokot, Kanyarkwat 6, measuring 800 acres and occupied by 70 households, and 2, West Pokot, Kanyarkwat 7, measuring 1,137 acres and occupied by 200 households. 3, West Pokot, Kanyarkwat 10, measuring 800 acres and occupied by 200 households, and state the measures taken by the Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, if any, to ensure that the land reverts back to the county government or community, and the legal action taken against the illegal beneficiaries. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one by Senator Abbas Sheikh Mohammed.
Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 531 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee of Finance and Budget on the status of the pending bills in Wajir County Government. In the statement, the committee should state the total amount of unpaid bills in Wajir County, giving a breakdown of these bills since 2013-2014 financial year to date, segregating the bills on the basis of development and the current expenditures against approved budgetary allocation for the county. State steps that have been taken to identify and fraudulently or irregularly claims among the pending unpaid bills, disclosing how the figures have changed over time, including interest charged, stating reasons for the delay in settling the bills. Give the particulars of statutory institutions, suppliers, contractors affected by the unpaid bills, disclosing the amount owed by the county government. State measures put in place by the county government in ensuring that the statutory institutions, suppliers, or contractors are paid, stating timelines, if any, and disclose legal or financial consequences that have arisen as a result of the unpaid bills, stating the interventions, if any, to ensure that such delays in payment do not recur in the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Let's get to statement by the Chair, Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, Human Rights. Understanding Order 56-1.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 56-1B of the Senate Standing Orders. Honorable Speaker, to issue a statement on the activities of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights for the period 13th October 2022 to 29th of March 2023. Honorable Speaker, the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights is established under Standing Order 228, 3 of the Senate Standing Orders, and is mandated inter alia to consider all matters relating to constitutional affairs, the organization and administration of law and justice, elections, promotion of principles of leadership, ethics and integrity, agreements, treaties and conventions, and implementation of the provisions of the Constitution and on human rights. Honorable Speaker, the committee, during the first session of this 13th Parliament and the first quarter of the second session, has undertaken during this period of review 31 sittings in which it considered various legislative proposals, bills, statements, petitions, and stakeholder engagements as set out below. A. Legislative proposals. Honorable Speaker, the committee undertook the publication scrutiny of 1
legislative proposal, which was referred to the committee pursuant to Standing Order 133A of the Senate Standing Orders. This was the draft Constitution of Kenya Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill, sponsored by Senator Beth Shengo, MP, seeking to amend the Constitution to give effect to the two-thirds gender principle in elective public bodies. The committee proceeded to examine the proposed bill against the criteria set out in the standing orders and held discussions with the sponsor during the consideration of the proposal. Subsequently, Mr. Speaker and honorable members, the committee resolved to recommend to the Honorable Speaker of the Senate to direct that the legislative proposal is accepted and that it be published as a bill, pursuant to Senate Standing Order 131-2. And Mr. Speaker, I am aware that this process is actively going on. Honorable Speaker, the committee further considered several bills which lapsed during the previous term of Parliament and identified some of which are due for reintroduction during the current term. These bills, Mr. Speaker, include the Law of Succession Amendment Bill, which is to be sponsored by Senator Veronica Maina MP, and who is a member of the committee. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, the Security Laws Amendment Bill, and number 3, the Alternative Dispute Resolution Bill. Under B, Mr. Speaker, on bills, honorable members and Speaker, the committee considered 3 bills during the reporting period and tabled the reports thereon in the Senate. These reports are under the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Amendment Bill number 49 of 2022, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill number 5 of 2022, and the Preservation of Human Dignity and Enforcement of Economic and Social Rights Bill 2022, Senate Bills number 7 of 2022. Mr. Speaker, the IEBC Amendment Bill has since been ascended to and is under implementation, while the other 2 bills are at various stages of consideration in the Senate. Honorable Speaker, this marks a 100% completion rate on the consideration and reporting by the committee on the bills which were referred to it in the session. Mr. Speaker, under statements, the committee has considered 4 statements sought by the senators and referred to the committee. These statements, Mr. Speaker, are as follows. 1, the statement made by Senator Samson Cherargei, MP, on commemoration of Koitalel Samoei Memorial Day and violations of the human rights of the Talai community of Kenya. Statement sought by Senator Alexander Mundigi, MP, on delayed payment to transport providers during and after the August 2, 2022 general elections by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission in Embu County. Statement sought by Senator Hamida Kibwana, MP, on access to justice by the family of the late Miss Ebi Noelle Samuels, and statement sought by Senator Christela Sige, MP, on the status of implementation of the Legal Aid Act number 6 of 2016. Mr. Speaker, on the statement made by Senator Samson Cherargei, MP, the committee resolved to address the matter holistically and to consider the work previously done on historical injustices in Kenya. This is an ongoing work by the committee, including during consideration of the petitions presently before it and which are discussed later in this statement. On the statement sought by Senator Alex Mundigi, MP, the committee held a meeting with the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, at which a detailed report was submitted on pending payments to service providers in Embu County, as well as other pending bills at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission from other service providers, not only from Embu, but across the country, including service providers who also participated during the August 2022 general election. Mr. Speaker, on the statement sought by Senator Hamida Kibwana, MP, the committee was scheduled to hold meetings yesterday and today with the key stakeholders to press for action on why action was yet to be undertaken on the persons responsible for Ms. Ebi's unfortunate demise. Mr. Speaker, before this could happen, that is, before we could convene the sessions yesterday and today, we were informed, the committee was informed that The authorities had already moved swiftly to arrest and present in court the key suspect in the death of the said student. This is a matter, Honorable Speaker, that we are now closely monitoring as a committee, and we will ensure that we follow to its conclusion so that we present a report to the House to ensure that justice is not only done, but is seen to be done to the family of the student. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, on the statement sought by Senator Crystal Asige MP, the committee held a meeting with the National Legal Aid Service at which the committee was apprised on the status of the implementation of the Legal Aid Act, Act No. 6 of 2016, and measures being taken to address the challenges that have hindered its effective rollout. In considering the said statements, Mr. Speaker, the respective senators were invited to attend and participate in the meetings of the committee, and their contributions and participations were duly recorded. In petitions, Mr. Speaker, the committee has 2 petitions referred to it and which are undergoing consideration. These petitions are one by Mr. Paulo Mosbey concerning historical injustices suffered by the Torobek community, and another petition by the Kipsigis Community Clans Organization members concerning land injustices suffered by the Kipsigis community. Mr. Speaker, the committee has undertaken extensive background and obtained sufficient information on works done on the 2 petitions. The committee is further scheduled to visit Nakuru and Kericho counties on the 14th and 15th of April 2023 to meet and receive submissions from petitioners and other stakeholders in the 2 petitions. Once that is done, Mr. Speaker, we project that we will finalize on our report and have them tabled in the Senate within 60 days timeline as provided for by the standing orders of this House. I encourage the senators who sought for these statements previously, because we have received in the course of our background check that there are various statements which have been sought on historical injustices, on land injustices, and also on various communities that have been affected, to also participate in the process so that we substantively deal with these issues. Mr. Speaker, on vetting of appointment to public office, Honorable Speaker, the committee during the period under review undertook the vetting of the Honorable Johnson Mudama, who was nominated for appointment to the position of Member of Parliamentary Service Commission under Article 127 2D of the Constitution. The committee tabled its report in the Senate, and following deliberations, the Senate adopted the report and approved the said appointment of the Honorable Johnson Mudama to the Parliamentary Service Commission. He has reported into office and is undertaking his mandate as a commissioner and serving the people of Kenya in that capacity as one of the members of the Parliamentary Service Commission. Mr. Speaker, on stakeholder engagements, the committee continued to hold regular engagements with its key stakeholders to receive submissions and exchange various legislative and other business under consideration of the committee, and also on matters which have been committed by the House to the committee. The committee has also participated in activities at which the chairperson and members of the committee have previously been invited to represent the Senate, including one during the launch of the annual State of the Judiciary and Administration of Justice report, commonly known as SOJA, held at Supreme Court grounds on the 14th of April, on the 4th of November 2022. Number 2, the 16th Annual General Meeting and Conference of Africa Prosecutors Association, APA, held in Mombasa County on 30th and 31st of January 2023, and consultative forum with the selection panel for appointment of the chairpersons and members of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, which, Mr. Speaker, I had the pleasure of addressing them yesterday in the course of their performance of their role. Honorable Speaker, while the committee had scheduled its induction and work planning retreats to be held in January 2023, the dates coincided with those of the CPA post-election seminar, and as a result of which we had to postpone the committee induction. This event, which we have since reconfigured to a stakeholder engagement retreat, is now scheduled to take place from Monday to Wednesday next week, where the committee has decided to sacrifice the period within which they are meant to be in recess in order to deal with serious issues involving this House. This retreat, Mr. Speaker, will be in Naivasha in Nakuru County, during which period the committee will meet with its key stakeholders, both from the government and non-state actors, to discuss on respective mandates and areas of convergence, identify legislative gaps, and firm up opportunities for collaboration and cooperation during the term of the 13th Parliament. Mr. Speaker, on county and foreign visits, the committee is scheduled to undertake its first set of county visits in the coming month, that is in Nakuru and Kericho counties, during which period it will receive stakeholder views on the 2 petitions which I have already addressed this House on previously. On foreign travel, Mr. Speaker, the committee participated in the 23rd Commonwealth Conference in March 2023 in Goa, India. The topics that were discussed during the conference were of great relevance to the committee mandate. Mr. Speaker, we are finalizing on the report on this particular visit and will be tabling it in the floor of the House upon resumption from the short recess that shall commence at the rise of the House today. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I want to thank your office for the support accorded to the committee in undertaking its work. I also wish to acknowledge the Secretariat support that the committee has received from the Office of the Clerk during the period under review. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend the members of the committee who have been very diligent in executing the work of the committee. This committee, Mr. Speaker, and I must commend, meets every day from Monday, on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, starting 8 a.m. in the morning to transact on the business that has been placed before the committee. And I want to commend the members, for we have not at any given time adjourned any session of the committee meeting for want of quorum. Mr. Speaker, I want to commit and appreciate them for the commitment that the members have shown to their work and the responsibility that they have. Mr. Speaker, I thank you and I present the statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Jailak. Actually, I want to really thank you for showing that direction. And in the Liaison Committee, today we anonymously agreed that we need to have quarterly reports from the chairs. And our request will be in the SBC next week, so that the chairs can get an opportunity to come and brief the House the progress of their committees and what they have done for 3 months, quarterly reports. So from the 11th, if that resolution is approved, we'll have chairs, at least 3 chairs per week, to get 10, 15 minutes each to give us an update on the committee work. Thank you, Chair Jailak, for you have shot the first one. What is it, Senator Kenywa? Or are you like moving your body instead of keying the intervention key?
Chair, it's because of the side I'm sitting, I'm not used to. Chair, I want to commend the good work that the chairman has done with his committee. Chair, I know that one, and Majority Leader would confirm that previously that was done after every 3 months. The chairman could come and give the report of his committee. But Chair, I have listened to one petition that, if memory serves me right, Chair, that petition was brought by Governor Sang concerning a certain community in Nandi. I don't know whether it's Talai, the issues of Talai. It was brought, and Majority Leader would confirm, because he was there, it was brought by Sang. Then it was brought again by Cherargei. So Chair, my worry is this. Are we just doing some investigations and then we fill in our shelves? Or Chair, do we need an implementation committee so that they can follow what we have, what the committee has recommended is followed into, instead of us having that committee doing investigation and having investigation and making the recommendation and their resolution? Are they followed, or are we just doing it? We become a talk show in this Senate. That was my request, Chair.
That is a valid concern, but now maybe the owner of the petition now maybe is not aware that that petition was executed by another senator sometimes back. So the chair of the committee will be able to work on it to know whether for sure they need to go back there or whether there is any report which was tabled here. If there is any other report, then the secretariat can advise you accordingly. And then you do some other things. Otherwise, now let us get the majority leader. Make your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order number 57-1, I hereby present the business of the Senate for the week commencing Tuesday, the 11th of April, 2023. As you are aware, the Senate will proceed on a one-week recess at the rise of the House today until Monday, the 10th of April, 2023. Regular sittings of the Senate will resume on the 11th of April, 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are 22 bills which have been published in the Senate. Out of these bills, 19 are at the second reading stage and one is at the committee of the whole stage. One other bill is undergoing concurrence as contemplated under Article 110 of the Constitution. The bill will be scheduled for first reading upon first reading upon completion of this process by the speakers of the Houses of Parliament. One bill was concluded and assented to by His Excellency, the President. As indicated in order paper number 8 and 9, there are bills scheduled for division at the second reading stage. I urge majority and minority whips to mobilize the requisite number of Senate so that voting thereon can take place. Additionally, I continue to urge the movers of the bills to avail themselves in the chamber whenever the bills are scheduled in the order paper. I urge honorable senators, in accordance with our constitutional mandate of representing the interest of counties and their governments, to attend plenary sittings to contribute the business of the House. 4, concerning bills that are under consideration by the respective standing committees, I urge committees to expeditiously conclude this process and to table the reports pursuant to Standing Order number 148-1. On this matter, I implore the chairperson of the Liaison Committee to intervene so that the reports on these bills are tabled within the stipulated timelines. Mr. Speaker, sir, with respect to petitions, the Senate has so far received 10 petitions that have been committed to various standing committees pursuant to Standing Order number 238. Standing committees are equally urged to process petitions within the 60-day period as per the provisions of Standing Order number 238-2. As I have communicated earlier, 2 petitions are already due for reporting by the standing committees on roads, transportation, and agricultural, livestock, and fisheries. I urge these committees to hasten the considerations of these petitions where necessary, seek the intervention of the chairperson of the Liaison Committee where challenges are being experienced. I also want to assure committees that my office is open for consultation in a bid to expedite performance of their functions. Statements are increasingly being sought pursuant to Standing Order number 53 and others issued pursuant to Standing Order number 52. I urge standing committees to utilize the coming recess to consider and conclude on statements as well as bills and petitions and report back to the House. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Senate standing orders were amended to provide for cabinet secretaries to appear before the Senate, to respond to questions, expound on government policies, and to provide reports concerning matters under their dockets. The amended standing orders will take effect on the 11th of April 2023. I want to take this opportunity to thank Honorable Speaker for giving guidelines on the processing of questions on measures to operationalize the changes to the standing orders. Yesterday, the Senate passed a resolution to alter its calendar for the second session to provide for sittings on Wednesday morning for cabinet secretaries to respond to questions and other business. Given that this is a new legislative process, I join the Honorable Speaker in appealing for cooperation from Honorable Senators and urge that we familiarize ourselves with the new procedure and the guidelines issued by the Speaker ahead of its application upon the resumption of sittings after the short recess. Mr. Speaker, sir, on Tuesday the 11th, 2023, the Senate Business Committee will consider and approve business for the day. This will contain business that will not be concluded from today's order paper and any other business scheduled on the order paper for Wednesday, 12th April, and for Thursday, 13th April, will also contain business for the subsequent days. The SBC will also schedule any other business, as well as petitions and statements pursuant to standing orders. As indicated in today's order paper, at order number 32, I'll move a motion for the adjournment of the Senate pursuant to calendar for the second session. During the recess period, the Easter holiday will be celebrated. Our Muslim brothers and sisters have already begun observing the holy month of Ramadan. I take this opportunity to wish all honorable members and staffers of the Senate Ramadan Kareem and a blessed Easter to the Christian brethren. Let us use the religious occasions to undertake introspection, reconnect with our Creator, and emerge stronger servants of the people, as even reflect, Mr. Speaker, of the challenges that our country continue to face. Mr. Speaker, sir, you will have keenly noted that our colleagues, mostly from the minority side, are not with us this afternoon. I have been informed that most of them are out on the streets protesting, Mr. Speaker. You know, that leaves us with a very difficult situation because, you know, Mr. Speaker, the setup of Parliament is such that because the 47 million of us cannot fit in one room to make a decision on matters and issues that pertain our country, then we go through an election so that you elect a representative to speak on your behalf and raise issues on your behalf on the floor of the House. Picture a situation, and I don't think we never, even the drafters of our Constitution, never anticipated such a situation where the representatives will abandon the premium platform that they've been given and join the citizens on the streets. Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate. That's not what we hope for our democracy. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we are aware of the difficult time that our country continues to face after every election, because there are people who will never accept the verdict of the people through the ballot. Then they have set up new mechanisms, Mr. Speaker, of finding a way of resolving electoral issues through extra-constitutional means. So the challenge that is before us, the challenge that is before the leader of the nation, the President of the Republic, is whether to perpetuate and inculcate this culture further or stick by the position that many are urging him, that stand by the rule of law. You swore by the Bible. You say that you're going to defend the Constitution. Defending the Constitution demands that you stay firm when the country is under threat. Mr. Speaker, Kenya is a poor economy. We are trying our best to move the country from a very difficult time where our economy had been ravaged. We found the administration that was there before us. They actually demolished all instruments of accountability. If, as has been said previously, Mr. Speaker, government was consumable, then they ate everything that was on the table, and even the spoons and the knives, I think they must have munched them halfway, Mr. Speaker. While the economy is being repaired right now, the same people are back on the streets, Mr. Speaker, saying, oh, the cost of living. Yet a few months down the line, when Kenyans were trying to speak, none other than Raila Odinga told us that don't bark like dogs. It's there. Don't make noise. Which country doesn't have debt? And so on and so forth, Mr. Speaker. For us to lose 2 days every week, every Monday and every Thursday, where citizens cannot go about their duties of nation building and us ensuring that we work to make our nation a better place, Mr. Speaker, then difficult decisions have to be made, unfortunately. Difficult decisions have to be made because we cannot be lied to, Mr. Speaker, that these are just peaceful demonstrations. There's nothing peaceful about those demonstrations. You have seen the struggle of our former colleague, Professor Peter Anyang' Nyong'o of Kisumu. And now I understand, Mr. Speaker, why yesterday he was at pains in the morning saying that we have cancelled demonstrations in the afternoon, of course, after being forced, saying that we shall try to demonstrate peacefully. You have seen what has happened in Kisumu today. After they looted all the supermarkets, they have now gone to kiosks of hustlers, ordinary citizens who don't know what a server is. They voted, in fact, for the same, most of them, for these candidates that are now mobilizing their supporters to terrorize them. And they thought that that will be the end of politics and the beginning of nation building. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, in concluding, I wish to urge our colleagues on the minority side that come back to your senses. Stop this blackmail. Stop this economic terrorism that you are ravaging and running on the people of Kenya, because there is no better way to describe what you are doing to your country. You cannot wish to have a better nation. You cannot wish to have a country that is governed by the rule of law, yet you are out there, Mr. Speaker, ensuring that other citizens are not able to enjoy what rights they are given under this constitution. Mr. Speaker, we have said time and again that just as you have the right to picket, the constitution does not have Article 37 alone. Respect the right of other citizens also who want to go about their duties. This is unfortunate, it's uncalled for, but I believe, Mr. Speaker, that in the fullness of time, a solution will be found, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Let's go to the next order. Okay, sorry. Honorable Senators, I want to rearrange the order of business. Business appearing as order number 8, 9, and 10 stands deferred. So we now go to the order number 11.
Order number 11, the preservation of human dignity and enforcement of economic and social rights bill, Senate Bills number 7 of 2022. Second reading.
Last sitting on the, so indicated. So Senator Mungatana moved the motion and was seconded. Now in the process of seconding, the majority leader has a balance of 51 minutes. So you either utilize the 51 minutes or on discouraging other senators to still sit and wait for you, or maybe you spend some few minutes and then other senators can...
Mr. Speaker, I can assure the senators in the House that I have no intention of doing 51 minutes. I'll try and be actually brief. I had said many of the things that I wanted to say that afternoon, but there's just something that I wish to conclude on, Mr. Speaker, reading through the bill. The bill, Mr. Speaker, just for purposes of reference, seeks to give life to Article 43 of our Constitution on economic and social rights. Mr. Speaker, I do not believe that it is out of idle duty that the drafters of our Constitution included any phrase, any letter, any comma, any full stop to be part and parcel of our Constitution. The fact that Kenyans voted unanimously and agreed that this now be the sovereign document that guides us as a people, Mr. Speaker, though still under a lot of threat and abuse, Mr. Speaker, by the people that I had earlier referred on to. You know, Mr. Speaker, when our colleagues on the minority side, specifically mostly those from the ODM party, run short of constitutional clauses to defend their bad habits, they normally resort to Article 1, Mr. Speaker. And they say, sovereignty, power belongs to the people. But they never read actually further downwards about what Article 1 says and what it demands of us as a people, that we can, how that power is to be exercised. That's not what I want to focus my contributions, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude on this bill, but to think through actually about Article 43 of our Constitution, that if you read through on what Kenyans, each Kenyan, be it in Mandera, Marsabit, Kericho, Laikipia, Makueni, Lamu, think about it, name every corner of this country, Mr. Speaker, that by Constitution, these are their rights that are guaranteed, that they demand, that they are actually supposed to enjoy, one, the highest attainable standards of health, Mr. Speaker, standards of which includes the right to health care services and reproductive health, accessible and adequate housing, Mr. Speaker. And you know, we've had this conversation about housing the last few days, because you know, when the opportunity has presented itself, when it's become difficult for our colleagues to demonstrate, they have found solace in visiting Kenyans who live in the informal settlements, of course, many of them because of the challenges of life. Perhaps even on a Monday afternoon, you'll find them at home, either because of lack of working opportunities and the same. While the administration, Mr. Speaker, you know for a fact that under our promise, under the plan, which is a manifesto of the Kenya Kwanza administration, Mr. Speaker, we have affordable housing as one of our key pillars, Mr. Speaker. And one of the programs that we are implementing is to ensure that subsequently over the years, we shall be able to get rid of Kenyans living in the kind of informal settlements that are known in almost each of our major towns, Mr. Speaker. Previously, Mr. Speaker, it was not ordinary to find slums, as these settlements have come to be referred to, in other parts of the country, apart from Nairobi and Nakuru. But you'll agree with me that almost every part of this country now, almost every county has a slum. And that's not what we fought hard about when we were thinking about this constitution. It is a constitutionally guaranteed right, Mr. Speaker, for Kenyans to live in decent housing. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, of course, freedom from hunger, Mr. Speaker. And reading through these economic and social rights, Mr. Speaker, I see the economic blueprint of this administration, Mr. Speaker, that we took time to draft, sold it to the people of Kenya. No wonder the people of Kenya agreed with President William Ruto that, having listened to all the presidential candidates, that he is the only one, despite all the odds that were stuck against him, that at least had a clue of what needed to be done in this country. Read through the economic and social rights that Kenyans demand be guaranteed to each and every Kenyan. Freedom from hunger, that it's unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker, for a Kenyan to be hungry. Of course, it's not easy to guarantee that particular right, because you know we are a capitalist society. We are not a socialist nation, Mr. Speaker, where we can say that those that are unable to, we will feed them. But what did we promise, and what are we doing as an administration, Mr. Speaker? We promised that we shall make food affordable. How do you make food affordable, Mr. Speaker? While our competitors were subsidizing the manufacturers, the big boys in this town who mill, make their profit, but on top of it, despite charging exorbitant costs to ordinary Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, need to be put on an affirmative program, Mr. Speaker, where they are paid and run it as a subsidy program, Mr. Speaker. But we said the easiest way to ensure that ordinary Kenyans are able to afford food and have it on their table easily, Mr. Speaker, is by ensuring that you subsidize production. You subsidize the farmer. You make sure that they are able to produce cheaply, Mr. Speaker. And that is what is being done. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, is to run. It's not sustainable, Mr. Speaker, to just rely on the ordinary farmers in Machakos, in Kitui, in Kericho, in Marsabit, to be able to feed the nation, Mr. Speaker. What governments, responsible governments are doing out there, and what this administration has begun, is that we must invest in large-scale agriculture as well, Mr. Speaker, to be able to be sure that at the end of the day, if the national demand, say, for a grain like rice is 300 million metric tons, Mr. Speaker, and farmers are only producing 100 or 120, the deficit, most of which we import and lose money and make us less competitive, Mr. Speaker, is produced locally through large-scale agriculture, Mr. Speaker, by ensuring that the government provides land, puts together the infrastructure by construction of mega dams. We know, Mr. Speaker, that there is a plan that at the end of the 5 years, this administration intends to put more than 400,000 hectares under irrigation, where investors will come and book a portion. Already the first lot of 20,000 is ready in Galana, Kolalo, Mr. Speaker, as we speak today. And a company known as Twiga Feeds is planting maize. That will ensure, Mr. Speaker, that unlike the current situation now, where due to weather conditions and, of course, after the substitution or replacement, abolishment actually rather, Mr. Speaker, of the fertilizer subsidy program the last 4 or 5 years, many farmers quit production of maize because it was not economically sustainable then. But there is 20,000 hectares of maize that is being planted. That will ensure, Mr. Speaker, that as our farmers produce for us, the deficit, most of which we normally import, Mr. Speaker. And you know, when you're importing, you're enriching the farmers of other countries, Pakistan, Indonesia, Zambia, and all these places where we import our grain from, Mr. Speaker. We shall ensure that guaranteeing these economic and social rights that you are talking about, Mr. Speaker. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, because I do not intend to be long on this, of course, there is clean and safety water. When we resume, Mr. Speaker, part of the bills that I shall be moving here as majority leader is amendments to the Water Act, Mr. Speaker, to provide for water purchase agreements so that investors are able to come and invest in the water sector in this country, use their own money, Mr. Speaker, then recover by buying. Kenyans can actually afford to buy water, Mr. Speaker. But the problem is that in many parts of this country, even that water for which Kenyans are willing to buy is not available, Mr. Speaker. If we rely on the government alone to say that as government, you either build a dam, it will take many years, Mr. Speaker. So what have we done as an administration? We've ensured that we've generated water purchase agreements, and that's part of the bills that we shall be moving here on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, when we return, so that we guarantee that in every part of the country, Mr. Speaker, there is available, there is access of clean, fresh water, Mr. Speaker. That's part of what is being guaranteed here under the economic and social rights, of course. Social security, you know what you are doing. Part of the amendments that shall be coming here, Mr. Speaker, are to do with NSSF, the ability to save, so that in your old age, Mr. Speaker, you're able to take care of yourself, so that you don't have this business of 200 shillings, Mr. Speaker. I have seen people try to oppose that policy move, Mr. Speaker, and you look at them and you wonder that you don't have to like the administration for you to use common sense. Tell me the truth, Mr. Speaker. How can you be saving 200 shillings and expect that in your old age, when you'll be 60 or 70 years, that the same will sustain you, Mr. Speaker, unless you're mad? So we are saying we want to provide reasonable social security, Mr. Speaker, that will be well invested, put in place governance structures under our social security fund, Mr. Speaker, where in those years to come, Mr. Speaker, in our old age, we shall be able to learn and have a good pension so that you don't have to disturb your children who will then try and, you know, Mr. Speaker, the challenge that we continue to have in this country. When people retire, they turn back to their children who are now just barely beginning life. Before they buy even their first house, they have to struggle again trying to take care of their parents, Mr. Speaker. It's a vicious cycle of poverty, which the only way to cut and ensure that you have a sustainable life is guaranteeing this right. Of course, the same can be said on education, medical treatment, Mr. Speaker, and so on and so forth. These are the social rights that are spoken about in Article 43, which Senator Dunstan Mungatana, Mr. Speaker, is guiding us and providing an avenue, providing a counsel for ensuring and guaranteeing that they shall check and ensure, Mr. Speaker, that when this council is set up and put in place, they will tick and see through every government policy that is being proposed on this floor or being implemented by the executive, Mr. Speaker, how it aligns, how it provides for ordinary citizens to enjoy these constitutionally guaranteed rights, Mr. Speaker. I know, Mr. Speaker, that there are concerns that have been shared by members of Justice and Legal Affairs Committee on either overlapping roles between the council that is being proposed here in this bill, Mr. Speaker, and Constitutional Commission like Kenya National Commission on Human Rights Commission, Mr. Speaker. I believe, given the fact, Mr. Speaker, of where we are as a country, that in some of these things, the more the merrier. If you can have more than one or two people checking and ensuring, guaranteeing, of course, in terms of budgetary provisions, we shall be able to align and divide their duties so that we ensure that Kenyans don't continue to suffer but enjoy these constitutional provided rights, Mr. Speaker, then that will be a good progress, Mr. Speaker. I don't want to be to continue longer than that, Mr. Speaker, because I know there are members of the Senate who want to speak on this particular bill, Mr. Speaker, but wish to make my comments up to that particular point. Mr. Speaker, with those very many remarks, I beg to second.
Thank you. Majority Leader. Okay, Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the preservation of human dignity and enforcement of economic and social rights bill, Senate Bill number 7 of 2022, be now read a second time. Honorable Senators, this is now the time for you to contribute, to make your contributions to the motion. Senator Mutinda. Senator Veronica Duarte.
Honorable Speaker, we have considered this bill from the JLAC and have made certain observations on what has been presented here today, Honorable Speaker. And having considered the Preservation of Human Dignity and Enforcement of Economic and Social Rights Bill 2022, and considering the submissions that we have received, there are certain observations that we have made as a committee, and we would be asking at a later date that some amendments be considered to be introduced to make the bill even more better. And Mr. Speaker, we think, first of all, the bill is very timely because it brings into fore or legislates upon very useful social and economic rights which have not been registered upon, Mr. Speaker. And Article 21, 1 and 2 of the Constitution does impose a duty on the state, Mr. Speaker, and every state organ to observe, respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights and fundamental freedoms provided for in the Constitution. And the state is also enjoined to take appropriate legislative, policy, and other measures to set standards to achieve the progressive realization of the rights provided for in that bill, Mr. Speaker, in that Article 43. The committee did actually observe that we required additional specific standards being provided for in that bill, Mr. Speaker, so that we can have a standard on which to measure whether these rights once provided for, Mr. Speaker, can be measured over time. Because, Mr. Speaker, it's one thing to say that a bill has provided for housing of Kenyans, and it's another thing to measure whether 2 houses are enough or 100 units of houses are enough. There must be provision of standards to show if we are talking about housing, Mr. Speaker, then what level of housing do we then say we are doing a progressive realization of that right, Mr. Speaker? So one of the items that have been provided for that would require reconsideration by the mover of this bill, our senior Senator Mungatana, is to consider introducing a set of standards to achieve what is intended by the bill. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have observed that the social and economic rights are also cross-cutting in nature, and they fall in different sectors. So they cannot be provided for under that bill in one stroke. They should be addressed maybe through different sectoral legislations that then become more refined and more better, Mr. Speaker, so that when we are talking about water, it goes into the sector where it belongs to. If we are talking about finance, then we know what we are talking about. It goes into the specific bills, legislations, Mr. Speaker. So sectoral legislations that then deal with the finer and minute detail of where each social and economic right should also fall into. Mr. Speaker, we were also of the view that some of these socio-economic rights could be existing in various legislations which have been fronted to this House through the majority leader, from the concerned ministries and state departments. And in order for us to comprehensively evaluate whether these socio-economic rights are provided for, it would also be important that these legislations are also, the existing legislations, Mr. Speaker, sir, are also analyzed so that the gaps that need to be addressed can be addressed, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I would say, Mr. Speaker, sir, a point in consideration, for instance, would be the fact that if you look at the Hustler Fund, Mr. Speaker, sir, it's addressing the needs of Kenyan citizens. And then you ask yourself, what fund would address the manufacturing industry in order for us to boost the local industry? Should we not have some legislation that matches the Hustler Fund in order to effectively address some of the issues that may be required to support manufacturers within Kenya to produce quality goods, and then balance the trade between export and import, so that we have incentives for manufacturers through a fund that then makes it much easier for people to set manufacturing industry. That's just one of the examples, Mr. Speaker, sir. Then we noted, Mr. Speaker, sir, that under Article 59 of the Constitution, 2 commissions dealing with human rights, e.g. the KNCHR and GEC, were created. The bill gives some of the mandate to only one of the commissions, Mr. Speaker, sir, while as the 2 commissions have mandates as concerns economic and social rights. Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill then needs to clarify between the 2, how do you distinguish the functions of, say, KNCHR and NGEC, that's the NGEC? How do you distinguish the functions that go to each? It needs to be clear, and distinct functions need to be assigned to avoid a situation where you have a clash or an overlap of the mandates of the 2 commissions. And then one of the other items that would need to be clarified in proposed amendments, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that the functions, the bill might tend to replicate functions of KNCHR as set out in Section 8 of Kenya National Commission of Human Rights. It therefore needs to bring into fore how those functions do not collide with the current bill, so that we don't have a situation where the institutions the creatures set by the bill also come into conflict with the KNHCR. And there is no need, Mr. Speaker, sir, as a way of value word, to replicate the functions. We can, the functions can be housed within one of the bills so that they are effectively executed by the relevant commission, Mr. Speaker, sir. Then there was the issue of equalization fund, which should, we were of the view as a committee that it should not feature within this bill. For obvious reason that the bill will create a parallel framework for implementation of the fund, which would result in a bit of a mix-up in terms of the functions of the equalization fund being located within that bill. Under Article 204 of the Constitution, this equalization fund was established to fast-track development in marginalized areas, to the extent necessary to bring the quality of service in those areas to the level generally enjoyed by the rest of the nations. So if that fund then is located within that bill, the understanding is that Article 43 is a general article for all the Kenyans, and there is then the specialized fund for any areas that are not at the same level with the rest of the country. So if we locate it within the bill that is being created under Article to actualize Article 43, then it means that you will either have mixed it with the general fund, or you will have not disentitled the equalization fund, or maybe neutered the equalization fund, and that also can result into confusion. So we were of the view that a consideration be made that the equalization fund is separated from the economic and social rights bill. Now, then the next issue would be the roles of each level of government, because these are rights that are supposed to be enforced both at the national level and at the county level. The bill should specify who is rolling out implementation of which level of rights, so that the responsibilities are also clear, to avoid conflicts and to avoid a situation where one level of government then leaves their responsibility to the next level and assumes that a certain responsibility will be undertaken at national level, while in actual fact, it should be implemented or actioned at the county level. Then the reporting mechanism of that bill. If it's a monitoring a monitoring bill where you are assessing whether the rights, Article 43, is being implemented effectively, what is the reporting mechanism and the requirements under the bill that should be set out in this bill to ensure that it is effectively done by the new law. And then, Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee also felt that the bill did not address instances in such issues like insecurity, contributed by non-realization of economic and social rights, either as a cause or effect of such insecurity, and what interventions can be taken to ensure that citizens residing in such areas do get to enjoy the economic and social rights as enshrined in the Constitution. And a case in point, which I have had debated in this House the last few days, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the situation of insecurity, which is happening right now in the region of West Pokot, Mr. Speaker, sir, Elgeyo Marakwet, where some senators have presented situations in this House, feeling that the levels of insecurity are actually caused by other causative factors like scarcity of resources, campering for those resources, and as a result of which, and not just that area, even other areas where we have a situation like in Kitui, where we have a scarcity of resources, driving communities to herd their cattle or to herd their camels in other zones where now the scarcity of those resources become a major causative factor of insecurity. Now, the bill also seems to suggest separate strategic plans for incorporating socioeconomic rights. The County Integrated Development Plan, CIDPSs, are expected to integrate all matters related to development within the county. And as such, an amendment to the County Governments Act would be preferred if the language in Section 108 of the Act is found to not properly capture the obligation under Article 43 of the Constitution. In effect, Mr. Speaker, sir, when we are looking at legislation that could be amended to bring into life or into effect Article 43, then we are looking at that Section 108 to see is there a possibility that it can be amended, it can be beefed up to allow for the County Governments Act, an existing legislation, to just continuously assist in rolling out or having an ecosystem that within which these rights can be rolled out. Now, one other observation that was done by the committee is that the development plans, both at the national and county levels of government, ought to integrate the realization of economic and social rights, and therefore there should be an alignment rather than a separation in planning and allocation of the available resources. It's harnessing the synergy of both the county level of government and the national level of government. Then there was also need for clarity on the efficiency of the institutional framework and the oversight mandate of the KNHCR. And for this reason, the committee observed that there is need for a feasibility study to determine the level of implementation of first generation of rights. And I know that the House is conversant with the first generation of rights. That's what is enshrined in the Constitution as the Bill of Rights, that being the civil and political rights, and the capacity of that commission to monitor the implementation also of the economic and social rights as proposed in the bill. So there would either need to be a separation so that if we are then mandating the KNCHR to deal with the first generation of rights, then are we saying that we now leave to the second generation of rights to the new bill, or are we saying that the KNCHR can have an amendment that allows it to then monitor the second generation of rights. Then there was also need for a national conversation on the concept of progressive realization of economic and social rights. And Mr. Speaker, what is notable is that over a decade since this constitution came into force, there has not been an attempt to start consolidating and implementing or monitoring the realization of social and economic rights. And though the government has been doing quite a bit in this area, there then needs to be an accountable legislative framework that then calls that, that article into some form of order or into some form of accountability insofar as its implementation is concerned. And further, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the oversight mandate of Parliament regarding monitoring and implementation of economic, social, and cultural rights should be more clearly provided for under that bill. And this should include the development of indices that Parliament can use to firstly monitor the implementation of economic and social rights by the two levels of government, and secondly, oversight the work of the national monitoring organizations such as KNC.
Yeah? Senator Veronica, yes. There is an intervention from the Honorable Senator Mudama.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker, we have no quorum for this sitting, for the Senate sitting. We have no quorum in the House.
Senator Mudama, I believe you are noting the Speaker understanding Order 41. Honorable Senators, I'm asking the clerk under the provisions of Standing Order 41 to ring the division bell for 5 minutes. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order number 41, there being no quorum, the Senate stands adjourned until Tuesday, 11th April 2023 at 2:30 p.m. Senator Veronica Maina, you will have balance of 4 minutes of your presentation when the Senate resumes.
What's driving the recent unrest in Kenya? Opposition leaders say they're protesting against the high cost of living. They also accuse the president of stealing the last election. So can this be contained or will it escalate? This is Inside Story.